By video's end, you'll know which pirate clause gave a deckhand more voting power than an English lord, and why the crown burned every copy it could find before the ink had even dried on the parchment. Picture a candlelit cabin aboard a captured sloop, the lantern swaying low above weathered timbers and shadowed faces. A quill rests in a small dish of blood and ink, mixed together in equal and binding measure. One by one, the men step forward, sailors stripped of country, of pay, of any future ashore. They press the quill to parchment, and they sign, binding themselves to the brotherhood of the black flag. The myth of the lawless pirate dies in that moment, drowned forever in candle smoke and solemn oath. Every man aboard signs the articles, or he hangs. There is no third path between ink and rope. And what is written upon that parchment is something no crowned king of Europe ever dared to print.
This is the Golden Age of Piracy, roughly the years between 1650 and 1730, 80 lawless years, when the Caribbean burned, the Atlantic ran red, and blood-soaked ports from Port Royal to Nassau changed hands constantly. Wars between England, Spain, France and the Dutch flooded the seas with privateers bearing royal letters of marque. Then the treaties were signed, and tens of thousands of trained sailors found themselves stranded on rotting quays, owed wages they would never see, cast off by the very crowns they had bled and starved to enrich. The Royal Navy still wanted them, but offered only the lash, salt pork crawling with maggots, and brutal discipline. Aboard a king's ship, a sailor was property, flogged for a glance, keel-hauled for a word, hanged for defiance. Discipline was a creed of pain, the captain ruled by admiralty warrant, the boatswain by the rope's bitter end. The food was rationed by men who never went hungry, while prize money vanished into officers' pockets ashore, into the hands of clerks and lords who had never seen a wave nor smelled powder smoke at sea. Under the black flag, all of that inverted. The flag itself was not a banner of chaos, it was a contract made visible, a skull and crossed bones, meaning articles agreed, signatures gathered, terms enforced. To raise it was to declare a republic at sea, a small, brutal, floating republic needing a constitution. The pirates wrote theirs in their own blood. Freedom came with articles no court would ever recognize. This is the central paradox. The most lawless men of the age lived under the strictest written law. Before each voyage, the articles were read aloud on deck, every word, every clause, slowly intoned. The quartermaster read them slowly, so no man could later claim ignorance of any single binding clause. Then each crewman stepped forward, laying his hand upon a Bible, a boarding axe, or a bleached skull. He signed his name. If he could not write, he made his mark in trembling ink or blood. Refusal was not permitted. A man who refused the articles knew too much about ship, faces, hidden anchorage. He could betray them all to a noose at execution dock. So refusal carried only one verdict: marooning on some sandspit with a single bottle of powder and a single pistol shot of mercy, or the blade across the throat at the rail, or cast off in the longboat without water, without sail. The articles were not a suggestion, they were a binding oath aboard a wooden world cut loose. And the first article alone, under the black flag, could cost a man his own severed hand. Consider the most famous code of all. The articles of Bartholomew Roberts, the Welshman called Black Bart, deadliest pirate of his age. 11 articles from the early 1720s. Read them, you read pirate civilization. Article 1. Every man has a vote in affairs of moment, equal title to provisions or strong liquors seized.
He may use them at pleasure, unless scarcity forces the company to vote a common retrenchment of stores. Equal vote. Equal share of rum and salt beef. Every man, from carpenter down to the powder boy. Article 2. Every man called fairly in turn, by list, when boarding the prizes they had seized. But if any defraud the company by even one piece of eight in plate or jewels, marooned. If a man robs another, his nose and ears shall be slit, and he is set ashore alone. The thief among thieves was the worst breed of vermin, and his punishment was written down first. Article 3. No person to game at cards or dice for money. Below decks, no gambling was allowed. The reason was simple. Gambling sparked knives. Knives split crews. Split crews lost battles. The code protected the ship. Article 4. Lights and candles out by 8 at night. Drinkers after the tower sat on open deck, without lights. Order, even in vice. Even drunkenness had a schedule, written into the law of the ship.
Article 5. Each man to keep his piece, pistols and cutlass clean and fit for instant service. Weapons inspected. A pirate with a fouled musket was a corpse waiting to fall on the bloody deck. Article 6. No boy or woman aboard. Any man caught smuggling one to sea in disguise would suffer death. This was not chivalry, it was discipline. Women aboard meant fights, jealousies, splits in the company itself. The penalty for smuggling a woman onto the ship was the rope or the blade. No appeal granted. Article 7. To desert the ship or your quarters in battle was punished with death or marooning ashore. The man who ran when iron flew was no man any longer, only cargo to be jettisoned. Article 8. No striking one another on board. Every man's quarrel ended on shore, at sword and pistol. Duels were lawful. Brawls were not. Two men with a grudge walked to a beach, paces counted. The quartermaster watched. The matter ended in blood or in handshake, but it ended one way or another.
Article 9. No man to talk of breaking up the company till each had shared 1,000 pounds. If a man lost a limb in service, 800 pieces of eight from the common stock awaited him. Lesser sums for lesser hurts. A pension. A workman's compensation scheme written into the pirate code itself. A full century before any factory worker in England would dare dream of such a thing for himself. Article 10. The captain and the quartermaster to receive 2 shares of any prize the crew took. The master, the boatswain and the gunner, 1 share and a half. Other officers, 1 and a quarter. Every other man took 1 share. The captain himself took only twice what the lowliest deckhand earned. Compare that to the Royal Navy, where a captain took thousands of pounds, while his men starved below. Article 11 decreed. Musicians rest only on the Sabbath. Every other day they played for the crew's dancing. Even the fiddlers were bound by law. But the punishments written beside these articles defied all imagination. Because for every right granted, the brutal code imposed a corresponding horror. Begin with the ritual of marooning. A man stripped to his shirt rowed to some barren quay, a sandbar without water or shade. Given a single pistol, 1 shot of powder, and a bottle of water that would not last 3 days. The pistol was a courtesy. It let him end it before thirst, the sun, or the crabs did. Many men used it the first night. Some held on for a week. None were ever found alive. Then the cat-o'-9 tails. 9 knotted cords on a wooden handle, each lash tearing skin from living bone. Pirates called the worst form Moses' Law. 39 lashes laid upon a man's bare and trembling back. The number was biblical, drawn from the punishment of the ancient Hebrews under their old sacred law. They held that 40 strokes would kill a man, so 39 was deemed an act of mercy. Aboard a pirate sloop, mercy was a sliding scale, a brutal arithmetic measured against the dying flesh. A man who survived Moses' law walked forever with a back of ridges, ruined for his short remaining life. Then came keel-hauling. The condemned, tied with a long rope, passed beneath the entire keel of the ship. He was thrown overboard from one side and dragged slowly beneath the hull, surfacing on the far side. The hull was thick with razor barnacles that flayed him alive as he passed beneath the wood. If he was lucky, he drowned quickly. If not, he came up gasping, a ruin of red strips, only to be dropped again into the dark sea. Few keel-haulings ever ended in any survival at all. Fewer still ended in sanity. Under the black flag, fortune favored only the ruthless and the cruelest. And then the myth, walking the plank. The image is fixed in every painting, every film, every story. A blindfolded prisoner edging along a board above the cold blue. The truth, however, is harsher and far quieter. Pirates almost never used the plank. It was theater, and theater wasted precious time aboard a working ship. The truth was the blade across the throat, the pistol to the temple, the body kicked over the rail. Quick, cheap, certain. The plank was a tale told later in taverns by men who wanted to sell rum. Beyond death came mutilation, ear cropping for the thief and the liar, nose slitting for the cowardly deserter who fled. Branding with a hot iron, the letter P seared into the cheek so no port would take him again. These marks turned men into walking warnings, the code's silent advertisements written in flesh and scar tissue forever. Yet the cruelest article had nothing to do with pain. It had everything to do with raw power. Beneath every cutlass and every lash sat the strangest secret of pirate life: real, working, brutally ruthless democracy. The captain of a pirate ship was elected by his crew, by majority vote of every man aboard. Not by birth, not by purchase of commission, not by favor of a lord, by show of hands. And the same crew that elected him could depose him with that very same show of hands on deck. A captain who lost a battle, chose the wrong price, hoarded too much, drank too much, was voted down. Sometimes he was simply shot. To check him further, the crew elected a quartermaster to manage the daily ship. He distributed food, water, and plunder. He led boarding parties. He punished crewmen for petty offenses aboard ship. The captain commanded only in chase and in battle. In every other hour, the quartermaster truly ruled aboard. 2 elected officers, each watching the other, each removable. This was the strange constitution of the Black Flag. Plunder was divided by written share, never by rank alone. Every man's portion calculated on the spot, by formula. If silver was taken, the sum entered the ship's book, each share inked beside the man's name. If a man lost an arm in battle, the articles paid him 600 pieces of 8. 500 for a left arm, 5 for a right leg, 4 for a left, 100 per eye, 100 for a finger. Tariffs varied by ship, but the principle was unbroken. The wounded were always owed. The dead man's share went to his named comrade, written in the articles and sealed by signature. This was a labor charter 100 years before the words trade union even existed in English common law. The pirate ship paid pensions, while the Royal Navy paid corpses. The crew elected its captain by open vote. Meanwhile, the Parliament of England was elected by perhaps 3 men in 100. The rest had no voice.
Under the Black Flag, an illiterate deckhand from Cornwall held more voting weight than a duke under King George. This is the truth behind the myth of the tyrant pirate captain. There were tyrants, yes, but rare ones. They ruled by terror, not by article. And terror, in a republic of cutthroats, was a brittle, short-lived throne. This freedom was bought in blood and paid in terror, a fragile liberty written on parchment and human skin. Look at the captains who wrote their codes into the dark ledger of history. Edward Lowe, the most savage. His articles, set down around 1722, were brief and merciless. Any man who deserted in battle was shot. Any man who kept a secret from the company was to be marooned on a barren island. Any man who struck another aboard was to receive Moses' law, 39 lashes laid hard on the bare back. Law himself was rumored to slice the lips from a captive captain and force him to eat them raw. His code did not need to mention cruelty. His name alone was the cruelty, whispered across every port. John Phillips, in 1724, set down 9 articles aboard the Revenge, carried home in a captive's pocket. Phillips' articles repeat the structure: equal vote, lights out by 8, no women, no boys, marooning for deserters, compensation for the maimed. The pattern holds across captains, across decades, across oceans, a shared inheritance signed anew. George Lowther's crew of the African coast enforced marooning to the letter. 2 men left on a sandbar. Neither was ever heard from again. The articles were operating instructions for survival in a world raised against them. Then came Edward Teach, called Blackbeard. He left no written articles. His command was an unwritten dread. Slow matches braided into his beard, lit before battle, framing his face in smoke. A bandolier of 6 pistols, a voice like cannon.
His crew obeyed, believing him half demon, yet even Blackbeard kept a quartermaster. Even Blackbeard divided shares. The code was the deck beneath him. Terror was only the sail above. And the code made no distinction by sex. Anne Bonny and Mary Read sailed under Calico Jack Rackham. They voted. They drew shares. They boarded ships sword in hand as full members of the company. When Rackham's sloop was taken off Jamaica in 1720, Bonny and Read fought on the open deck. The men hid drunk below. The court that tried them recorded their roles as crew, not as ornaments. Bonny spat at her captain before he was hanged. "If you had fought like a man," she told him, "you need not have been hanged like a dog." The code did not save Anne Bonny that day, yet the code had given her that final word. Then came the trial that dragged it into daylight. Cape Lopez, West Africa, February 10th, 1722. Bartholomew Roberts lay at anchor with 3 ships and a drunken crew.
His men were heavy with captured Madeira. He had taken more than 400 vessels in his savage career. He was the most successful pirate ever to sail. He wore crimson damask and a gold diamond cross, 2 pistols at his hip. A Welshman, a former second mate, who once resisted piracy and became its emperor. That morning, a sail appeared on the horizon. Roberts's lookouts thought it a merchantman. It was not. It was HMS Swallow, a Royal Navy 50-gun ship under Captain Challoner Ogle, hunting Roberts across 2 oceans. The Swallow had disguised her gun ports. She came on, slow, patient, like a wolf stalking across new snow. Roberts dressed for battle. Some accounts say he ate calmly, then ordered the cable cut so they could run. The Swallow opened her ports. The first broadside crashed across the pirate deck. Roberts stood near the helm. A blast of grapeshot, dozens of small iron balls tore through his throat. He fell against the rigging.
He was dead before his crew could reach him. His men did as he had once asked of them. They wrapped him in his crimson coat, then weighted his body with heavy iron chain and cannon shot. They slid him over the rail into the dark Atlantic before any English sailor could lay a hand on him. No grave, no port, no gallows. The greatest pirate of the age vanished beneath the waves of Cape Lopez, and no man has ever found him since. Fortune favored the ruthless, even beyond the black flag. The crew was taken, 272 men carried to Cape Coast Castle on the Gold Coast. Inside that slaving fort, they faced trial, and the articles of Bartholomew Roberts were read aloud in the courtroom. Read into evidence. read into the official record of the mighty British Admiralty. Every clause, every signature counted. The Crown finally held in its hands the Constitution of the Black Flag, signed by hanged men.
52 of those men were hanged, their bodies left in iron cages along the lonely African shore, a warning to any sailor who might dream of the same freedoms, to taste the same lawless liberty. The articles entered the archives, sealed away, and the Crown set about destroying every copy still afloat at sea. With Robert's death, the Black Flag began to fall. Within a decade, the Golden Age was over. The articles were outlawed. To possess a copy was treason. The parchment alone was enough for the news. Yet the code did not die. It seeped, it bled into the maritime labor charters that followed after. Compensation for lost limbs, shares of prize money, elected representatives among the crew, rest upon the Sabbath day. The bones of the pirate articles became the bones of merchant seamen's contracts a full century later in London. Lawyers in London would never admit it, but the structure was there, copied without acknowledgement from the hanged dead.
Subscribe and raise the Black Flag with us. There are still more dark stories waiting beneath the waves. Hollywood took the rest and buried it under parrots and peg legs. The walking plank that almost never happened. The buried treasure that almost never was. The eye patch, the doubloon, the parrot screaming on a shoulder. These are the keepsakes the world chose. The ledger, the article book, the signed parchment with names beside crosses. That part was burned or sunk or filed inside a vault no tourist would ever dare open. The truth behind the myth is not chaos. It is contract. A small republic afloat on a wooden raft, writing its own laws because no other laws on earth would have it. Fortune favored the ruthless. Aboard the pirate ship, fortune favored the ruthless who could still read. One last article was never spoken aloud. That last article was not written down on any sheet that survived. It was understood. It was this.
No man among us shall ever return to the world of kings. Once you sign forever. There is no pardon that can be trusted, no port that can ever be entered without full disguise, no name that can be spoken without risk. The articles bound a man not only to his ship, bound against every shore not his own. Freedom under the Black Flag carried one single, final, irreversible cost. You could never go home. Not to England, not to kin, not to the world that birthed you. If you want to know how Blackbeard met his final stand, the cove where the Royal Navy cornered him, and the head that hung from the bowsprit afterward, the next video is already waiting on the channel. Subscribe and raise the Black Flag with us. Join the